Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm very pleased to rise today on Bill 373. I think it's a great bill. It brings a lot of information. But as the last speaker said, it has some problems. And I'm going to address those a little bit later. You know, last month I got up here and I spoke on Motion 148, which established a National Impaired Driving Prevention Week. Impaired driving has been a criminal code offence in Canada since 1921. It's still a problem. It hasn't gone away. We still need to address it. And 1 in 5 drivers involved in fatal collisions, statistics tell us that they've been drinking. And I even look at my own province, the province of Alberta. Between 2011 and 2015, 389 Albertans were killed. 6,000 were injured due to driving with alcohol. Impaired driving, Mr. Speaker, is still a problem. Alcohol, drugs, or a cell phone. M148 received unanimous support in this House, and I want to thank all the members for that because it was an important motion. But today, Bill C-373 focuses on distractions. And a number of deaths are equally close to those of impaired driving by alcohol. In fact, there's a number of provinces, Ontario and BC, which distracted driving now outnumbers fatal collisions over impaired driving. And that is not good. That is bad, Mr. Speaker. Drivers who text are 23% more likely to have an accident than those that don't. You know, I remember last year, a police officer from Vancouver pulled over a driver, and he shared a photo of the distracted driver, and it went viral across Canada and North America. As the officer approached the pulled over vehicle, he saw the driver had attached his phone to his steering wheel with a piece of string. And then he went to all the trouble to wedge his tablet between the wheel and the phone. He even had his headphones stuck on his head, plugged into the phone, and driving with them. You know, it's a wonder that he ever even noticed the policeman trying to pull him over, and it took quite a while to get that done. You know, that's ridiculous. It's almost criminal when you think about how stupid people can be. But Bill M148, oh, wait a minute, I think I just talked about that. Thank you. You know, I was driving down the road one day, and I'm going to speak a little bit about my earlier days as a police officer, because I think I can add a few that would bring a little bit of understanding to the situation we have here. And it isn't new, folks. It's been there for a long time. You know, one day I was driving down the road. It was snowing outside. It was slushy. It was early in the morning. And I was just going under the speed limit because it just wasn't quite safe to go that fast. And I saw this guy going by me, and I was quite surprised. So I looked out the window. And there he was, driving down the road, one hand on the wheel of the car, one hand on a razor, shaving himself at 6 o'clock in the morning, driving down a slushy, wet, slippery highway. I remember once following a lady that was kind of weaving a little bit, and I could see her keep looking over at the mirror. I pulled her over. She was putting makeup on as she was driving down the road. Another time, driving down the highway, and I swore I had an impaired driver in front of me. He was weaving to the right. He was weaving to the left. I could see his head bobbling up and down. And what the heck? I got a good impaired driving. So I followed him long enough to get the evidence. Then I pulled him over. Yeah, he was driving impaired. He had a book on the steering wheel of his car, and he was reading as he was driving down the highway. Now, both those last two, I can tell you, definitely got tickets for it. But today, cell phones are a big problem. Driving and texting, bigger problem. And even talking through a Bluetooth system is dangerous. I'll try to clarify that a little bit, Mr. Speaker. You know, as I said earlier, drivers who text are 23 times more likely to be involved in a crash or a near miss. The statistics are out there. Whether texting or even talking, you can fail to see 50% of the information that's in front of you because your mind is thinking about what you're talking about or what you're texting. That's 50% that you're missing, that you're driving towards. It's been said that trying to text and drive is like driving blindfolded down the length of a football field. That's 110 yards. Yet people continue. Every day we see them going down the road. They're texting and they're driving. They're putting their lives and others at risk. Even talking as you drive poses a risk. We don't believe it does because we think the Bluetooth is a safe addition to our car. But you're not paying full attention. As I mentioned earlier, you're missing stuff in front of you. And the technology we have today is great, and most of us have Bluetooth technology in our cars. And evidence shows us that even talking, connecting or disconnecting from a wireless phone system distracts the driver. Mr. Speaker, you know how much he's distracted? By 27 seconds. They've calculated that out. They figured it out. They watched people driving out. 27 seconds. You know, at 40 kilometers an hour, that's like driving down the length of 3 football fields. Now, that's getting close to 1,000 feet, Mr. Speaker. 1,000 feet. That's a pretty long distance, being distracted. Now, just think about it. All of us, we all have freeways in our constituencies. And everybody, it might be 110, but everybody drives about 120. That's about the average on the freeways in Canada. So 120, that's 3 times faster than 40 kilometers an hour. And that's getting up to 3,000 feet, Mr. Speaker. That's half a mile that you've missed. A lot can happen in half a mile. It now becomes scary, Mr. Speaker, when you start putting the math to it and the statistical data out there. Did you know that recent stats, according to Statistics Canada, that distracted drivers play a role in 23% of fatal accidents and 20% of those of injuries now? And the numbers are continuing to rise. This bill focuses on handheld electronic devices. But this is where I think the bill kind of failed a little bit. I think we could have gone further. But as I mentioned earlier, distractions come in many forms. And I just want to read what we in the RCMP had as a quote. A form of impaired driving as a driver's judgment is comprised when they are not fully focused on the road. That's what I've been talking about. Thank you. Distracted driving qualifies as talking on a cell phone, texting, reading, using GPS, watching videos or movies, eating, drinking, smoking, personal grooming, adjusting the radio, CD, and playing extremely loud music. Hey, we all do it quite a bit. Even talking to passengers and driving while fatigued can be a form of distracted driving. This bill focuses on handheld electronic devices, but as I mentioned earlier, distractions come in many forms. In the RCMP I mentioned earlier that distractions like shaving makeup are a problem. It's happening today. But I also want to mention distractions like other people in your vehicle talking to you or arguing or playing loud music takes your attention away from driving. That's distracted driving. People have a fondness for pets. We've all taken our pets and put them on the lap of our vehicle as we drive and we pet and we look at them and we pet. Distracted driving, Mr. Speaker. These are all forms of distracted driving, and I believe that Bill C-73 was trying to reach that, and I think that we needed to look at it. But maybe we should expand it. One concern I have, and I do not understand why, and maybe I missed this, is the exclusion of the territories. It only mentions the provinces. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I got 1 minute. Yet statistics showed in 2006 that the Northwest Territories and the Yukon have a high percentage of drivers using cell phones. One thing I like about Bill C-373, and I think it's very important, because it proposes a national framework on distracted driving, and it would improve the collection of information and statistics. And this is so vital. When I was looking up the research here, there's not enough, and I know that there is a lot of problems out there. To make this bill work, we need collaboration between lawmakers, enforcement agencies, citizens, provinces, and industry. So we all need to work together to eliminate distracted driving. Bill 373 is a necessary piece of legislation, but I'm not sure if we can enact it when you look at all the legal ramifications. I would like to thank the member for bringing this bill forward. I think it is very worthy of having a good debate and discussion in the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.